Hey there, guys. I wanted to make a video more about my new book, Minds Over Meetings, because I've talked a lot about it, but I really haven't done a breakdown of what's inside, what to expect, and what I talk about, because there's a lot going on here. I don't just talk about schizophrenia or mental illness, I talk about mental health, disability, knowing your rights as a worker. There's even a section specifically for leadership, people who are hiring individuals with mental health issues or with mental illness diagnoses. So I wanted to share with you guys a little bit more about the book, why I wrote it, the process I had to go through to write it. And I would love if you could check it out and give it some love, give it some support, but let's get into it. So my publisher reached out to me because mental health in the workplace was a trending topic after COVID, which it should have been years ago, but we finally are starting to have that conversation with employers, with employees about the importance of addressing and acknowledging mental health, burnout, mental illness, and all of these different topics. As a person living with schizophrenia who worked in many different industries, including production, manufacturing, distribution, office roles, management, I wanted to share my experience of what it was like figuring out how to work in different industries and different workplaces, how I learned to function, the conversations I had to have with my coworkers, with leadership, and not only how I was able to get jobs with a diagnosis, but keep jobs. I start the book talking about me and my diagnosis so people have a better idea of who I am and why I'm talking about these things. I go right into the difference between mental health and mental illness, and then I talk about stigma, all of the different things I experienced, what I heard other people say about mental health. I wanted to show people what it's like working for places that don't understand mental health, that are more toxic, and that don't care as much about their employees. Because I've worked in both really supportive, amazing careers and also in jobs that couldn't care less about me or what I was going through. I've lost jobs because of my diagnosis. I've lost jobs because I didn't disclose my diagnosis and ended up having symptoms later on in life. One of the first things I get into is understanding that mental health affects everyone. Mental health can be good or bad. You can struggle with mental health without having a mental illness diagnosis like schizophrenia, bipolar, DID, BPD. And so I wanted to talk about how anyone can be affected by burnout, because burnout is most commonly caused by work, and anyone can experience burnout. I think when people hear burnout, especially like where I'm from a small rural area where people associate burnout with like, you're not working hard enough, or you're too weak, or you need to get over it. And burnout can happen to anyone, especially in the workplace. I've seen this happen in office roles, but one of the places I don't hear it talked about enough is manual labor jobs, physical jobs, jobs where people are working 10 to 12 hours, working really hard. They're trying to impress their boss. They're trying to do work that they're not being compensated for, they're not required to do, but they want to be a team player. And people get burned out really quick. And I'm even talking about very disciplined, hardworking men who were raised to believe that their value is directly correlated with the amount of work they do. Because I was raised in a small community, rural community, that's what people make you think, is that you are as good as the work you put out. I went straight into talking about what it was like working in those different types of workplaces, but also I wanted to give people a view of how I was treated differently in those spaces, not just by leadership, but by other people I worked with. And a lot of the times it was because people didn't understand their own mental health. They didn't understand mental illness. They didn't understand schizophrenia. And so I would face a lot of ignorance. I would face a lot of issues trying to get jobs or maintain jobs. And some of the ways that I was able to work around this was disclosing my illness after I was hired for jobs. So if I was offered a job, I would then go to human resource. So I would disclose my schizophrenia diagnosis, what it looked like day to day, and what kind of reasonable accommodations I might need in the future. And that was really helpful for my employer to better understand what kind of things I would need as someone working with a disability, as someone working with a mental illness. Now, it is important to acknowledge that not every employer is going to be good about meeting your expectations or providing those reasonable accommodations. And that's when you really need to know your rights as a worker. This is a super important conversation right now because things are changing a lot in mental health in the workplace. And so you need to be up to date on your rights and what you can ask for and what reasonable accommodations are. One of my favorite parts of this book was talking about the different things I experience and also some of the workplace sayings that are really common. And so one of them I always heard was leave your problems at the door, which in theory sounds great, but people living with severe mental illness, people living with mental health issues, people experiencing a traumatic event or some sort of life-altering change can't just leave that at the door when they show up for work. And that's just one of the many outdated workplace conversations that aren't being addressed, aren't being changed. I thought it was really important to talk about like what kind of workplace antidotes there are, because some of them are just so outdated. A lot of them just don't make sense. They're not accurate with how humans function. For one, I don't like the term workplace balance. To me, it sets up an unrealistic standard that we need to be able to balance both work and life perfectly. Your outside life, to me, should always take priority over a workplace that don't care about you like your friends, your family, the people in your life. And so I've never found that to be a saying that makes sense. There are a lot of other ones, but those are just a couple. Before I get into like how employers can be better, because what I realized was people living with mental illness, people that are struggling with mental health can only do so much. Employers also need to be willing to accommodate and provide resources and allow employees to share about what they're struggling with and what they think can be improved in the workplace. I'm going to make a separate video specifically for employers, leaders, and HR because I want to make sure that they understand that, we can only do so much as people that need these accommodations and resources. There's a lot they can do to make sure that they don't have huge turnover and that people with mental health or mental illness are being accommodated and being able to continue working for them. And a lot of the studies I use in this book are from SHRM, which is the Society for Human Resource Management, and NAMI, which is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. I talk about how a lot of these studies show that employees are working at places that accommodate their mental health. Younger employees are even willing to look for new jobs that might be a better fit for them, their mental health, and to prevent burnout. I also interviewed 2 other mental health advocates in this book. Gabe Howard, who's a bipolar advocate, he talks about his experience being fired after receiving a bipolar diagnosis. I also talked to Michelle Hammer, who is a schizophrenia advocate. She was fired from over 10 jobs in her graphic design expertise because of the issues she had understanding her negative and cognitive symptoms of schizophrenia. Both of their stories provide huge insight and also show that my experience in the workplace isn't singular. It's a universal thing that people struggling with mental illness or mental health issues experience. There's so much more in this book I want to share with you guys, but let me know if you'd be interested in a part 2. I just wanted to give you a short rundown of what things to expect. You can find this book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and on my website, kodygreen.com/mindsovermeetings. I would love to answer any questions you guys have about mental health in the workplace, so leave your questions down in the comment section and I'll try to get to all of them. Also, if you've read the book, let me know what you think down in the comments. I would love some feedback on how it was received, especially if you're someone who struggles with a diagnosis or you struggle with mental health issues. I greatly appreciate the feedback, and I wanted to make sure that this book reflected more than just my experience. I wanted to make sure this could be a resource for people who were also struggling. So thank you guys so much for watching this meeting. If you're an employer who's watching this or a person in HR, make sure you put minds over meetings. Thank you guys so much.